are available at our YouTube channel. So see any sessions, you can go there. Okay, so with that, I'm gonna start sharing my screen. Please, if you don't mind, can you please mute your phone? And if you have any questions, please unmute or you know paste it through the IM window. Okay, so once again, good morning, happy Friday, everyone. We're gonna talk today about Azure's global infrastructure. Okay, so I mean, it's a new year, just started, and we know that Azure is changing at a rapid pace. There are new innovations happening, um, and new things being kind of features, services being added all the time. What we're going to do is we're going to take a little bit of a step at a high level, look at the global infrastructure. So just go over a bit of the on the fundamental side of things. Go over that. So that's what we would like to do. So that's why this topic. So quick blurb about myself. I'm a Azure Cloud Solution Architect, if you don't know me. And then let's quickly look at Azure region. So whenever we talk about Azure Global Infrastructure, sometime with our customers or I mean, some people who are new to Azure, sometimes it's like, oh, where the data centers are. And it's good to get an understanding what is a region, what is a geography, and what is a data center, what are availability zones. So first of all, we need to understand what is the impact on the overall architecture in terms of high availability, what is the impact on the architecture in terms of cost. So all of those things kind of are very important to understand as we go through this discussion. Okay. So let's first of all, Azure have 55 regions spread across the globe. Some of the regions they are reserved for certain kind of entities, like the regions in China. They are not operated by Microsoft. They are operated by a third party, and we'll talk about it. So as we go through the slide deck, and go ahead. Any questions? So first of all, what is geography? Geography is a geopolitical area with certain redundancy and as well as some of the compliance requirement. Okay, for example, Americas, which includes North America, Canada, South America, it's one geography. Then we have Europe, which is all the European countries. Then we have Middle East and Africa, which is UAE regions. And then we have the Asia Pacific. So these are four regions. And I just want to show you, we will come back to this slide. So this is kind of a breakdown of all the geography, what regions comes in each geography. You have central, you have east, west. And one thing to keep in mind in those, kind of uh, region that, for example, Azure Gov is in Americas region, as well as Canada and Brazil. In terms of Azure Gov, as we know that this is Azure government, and this is a cloud for government agency, local government, as well as Department of Defense and all. So that's what regions are. Okay, regions are made up of multiple availability zones. And just keep in mind that not every region, our plan is to have uh, availability zones in every region, but not every region has availability zones. Okay. So what is an availability zone? What we are doing is we are dividing each region into availability zone to provide redundancy. Each zone has separate network connection and separate power provider. So if let's say one power provider is out or power source is out, we still, and if we lose or network resource is out and we lose an entire zone, we don't lose an entire region. That is very important to understand. This is basically the concept of availability zone. In a number of regions, we are putting availability zones, but in some not it's not in every region. So that's important. Second thing is when we talk about regions, regions are uh, regions are spread out at least 200 miles apart. So let's say if there is a physical calamity in one region like a hurricane or earthquake, other regions are not impacted. Okay, so that's a key point to understand. And finally, each availability zone has data center. So region is not equivalent to a data center. It is not. Basically, um, it's more of a what I call a pizza pie metaphor, that you have a region which has availability zones. So each slice is an availability zone, and the topping on that is a data center. So that's how it works. So wherever you have availability zone, that's how it works. Even if you don't have availability zone, there are multiple data centers in a certain region. And let's spend a few more minutes on availability zone. So there is, of course, there is a network latency that comes into picture if you are deploying across availability zone. Also, there is a bandwidth charge. If you look at the bandwidth cost when you are deploying application in an availability zone, right now there is no charge, I think, till March of 2020. So it's free of cost when you are deploying your application across availability zone. There is no charge to it for the bandwidth charge. But after that, you will be paying a bandwidth charge as your network traffic goes across zones.
Can you say that again?
Yes. So basically, at this point, there is no bandwidth charge. So when you deploy your application across zone, the network traffic. So let's say you have 3 VMs in a application, and you deploy this across a availability zone, one in each, or a scale set that you deploy across zone. The network traffic that goes between those VMs is not charged at this point, the bandwidth. But after March 2020, you will be charged for it. So that's something to keep in mind. You know, that charge may be small, maybe negligible, but that's something to take into account to understand when you are building a architecture for your for either for your company or for your customer, that you have to understand that there will be a charge that will come up that you have to pay for this bandwidth. And also, whenever your applications are spread across zone, there is um, a network latency around 2 milliseconds. I mean, they say less than 2 milliseconds. So this is very fast, but still, you have to understand it's there, and you should be able to justify it when you are building an application that the cost that you are incurring. Okay, does that answer your question?
Cool.
Yes, perfect. Thank you.
Okay. So this is the diagram of the availability zone, and why. And by the way, many times it is said that, oh, how these zones are physically separated. So, for example, this is our Dublin data center. I'm sure you have I mean, this is a public picture. We've seen these pictures in different presentation, but as you can see how spread out this region is. There are many data centers which are spread out, and this is kind of a 3, 4, 5. I mean, that's how we started. And as we are, there's a lot more space there, so we are adding. So this is spreading horizontally. So in this case, zones may be geographically separated. So when we talk to customers or when we are understanding as we are, as you are building uh, for your organization, some application, you have to understand that zone don't have to be geographically separated, because look at this. This is our Southeast Asia data center in Singapore. That's in Singapore. If you know, the real estate is really, really expensive. So what we are doing, instead of spreading out, we are, expanding upwards. So there, the separation of zones will maybe more logical. So yes, we will have a separate network and power provider. That goes without saying, because that's the main thing. But the separation of zones in this case will be more of logical than kind of a geographical separation that you may see in other regions where we are building horizontally. So this is something to keep in mind. Sometimes customer asks like, okay, yeah, I'm doing availability zones, or are they separated? How far they are? And a few customers have asked, is US East 2 is a zone of US East? No, US East 2 is a separate region. This is very important. US East 2 is a separate region. Okay. Um, yes, it is on the east, US East geography, but it is a separate region. Same thing with US West too. It is not a zone. It is a separate region. And I think that's what we need to, that's the lingo, we need to speak, saying that this is not a data center, this is a region, because there are many data centers. Okay. So with that, I want to show you.
Can I ask another question?
Yeah, please.
So the regions are geographically separated 200 miles or more.
Yep.
Availability zones are each AZ has its own network and power.
Yes.
They could be stacked, they could be adjacent. There is no geographic separation per se.
There may or may not.
Okay.
There may or may not. Because remember the diagram that we saw for the Dublin? I mean, if we are building, some of the data center have spread out like this way. So there may be separation in this case, geographical separation in this case. But if you are in Singapore, where, I mean, or in areas where it's very hard to get real estate, that's where you're stacking up. So there may not be true geographical separation, but definitely separate power and network providers.
Perfect, thank you.
Okay. So let's take a minute and talk about availability sets. Okay. And since we are on the topic of, on the regions and high availability, so that's why it's very important to bring up availability sets, and then we will spread out from there. What are availability sets? Before that, let's talk about fault domain and update domain. So we have hundreds, if not thousands of rack, where each rack hosts thousands of physical host servers. Okay. Each rack has a power and a network connection. If one of that goes down, basically that rack is unusable. All the VMs are gone. We can't access them. And if your app is running, or VM is running, that's gone. It will pop somewhere else. Okay. So that's your fault domain. Second is update domain. When we do host updates in a region, or more specifically in a data center, we do it in waves, and we select certain set of racks, we update them. So that's your update domain. When you're deploying your application and you have different tiers, let's say front end, middle tier, back end, you want to deploy each tier into an you can deploy each tier into an availability set. In this case, what we will do is we will spread those VMs. Let's say you have 4 or 5 VM across different fault domains and update domain. So if, let's say, a power or network failure happens and one of the rack goes down, or we are doing update, and that may cause a reboot of the host, your application does not go down. And that's very important to understand. So this is, but just keep in mind, availability sets are specific to a data center. They're tied to a data center. If that whole data center goes down, or the zone in which that data center is, given that region has zones, that goes down, then availability set will not help you. Okay. So that's where availability zone comes into picture. And that's why this diagram is very important to understand. Um, with a single VM with premium storage, you get 99.9 SLA. You know, with if you have those VM, um, across availability sets, with a VM scale set, you will get 99.95. If you spread them across availability zone, you get 99.99% SLA. And if you want to go higher, you want to go to, now you want to spread application. So that's where your own HA requirement comes into picture, that you want to build, have application deployed in multiple region. And that's where I want to kind of give, uh, you know, um, audience kind of think about, yes, everybody want to have 100% or 99.9 or 999% SLA, but everything has a cost associated with it. Okay. And that's where you have to understand, is that application worth that cost, or is that SLA worth that cost? Because normally when we look at this in depth and look at an application in depth, which is asking about, oh yeah, we need this, and then when the cost comes into picture, oh yeah, that's how much it costs to have 4 nines, then immediately, oh yeah, I think we can go a little bit down. And I know I have worked with customers who have said that, um, we have to have like 4 nines or 5 nines SLA, and they have done it through multiple deployment, multiple regions, and other ways. So that's where, and because for them, a 1 hour may.
Hey guys, can anybody hear?
Well, we can hear you.
No, I lost
Okay,
it. I lost it too.
got it. I'm just making sure it's not just me.
Hi guys, sorry, can you hear me? Hello.
Yep,
Yeah.
Hello.
we can hear you now.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
Sorry,
We can
man.
hear.
Okay. I don't know what happened. I mean, it just suddenly went to mute. So let me just share my screen again. I'm really sorry for that. Okay, can you hear me still? All good?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, okay. So basically, the thing is, I cannot see your IM since I'm presenting. So I'm just going to repeat it one more time, that your application cost should be proportional, or at least proportional to what your HA requirement are, true HA requirement. And that's why it's good to analyze, because Azure can provide all of these, can meet all of these HA requirement. So this is actually the true reliability of an Azure data center. This is 5 nines. So, it can provide that reliability. I mean, you can build your application that way, spread them across multiple regions and all, and do innovative things. But that cost has to, be justified in terms of, okay, yeah, that's the real HADR requirement, because I have customers who are running their business applications in Azure, and they have said, this application, it's not 24/7. If there is an outage, I mean, if we can get back it in maybe a couple of hours, it's okay. So that's gives you a totally different requirement, um, considering given that you have another application that is, cannot go down at all. So that's something, to understand. So any questions so far? Okay. So, oh, by the way, I just want to share this screen. These are the regions where availability zones are there. So it's not available in all region, and this is a list of region. You have Central US, East US 2, and then let me just go down, and for some reason you have to scroll this screen. This is really annoying. And so these are all the region where West US 2, East US 2, East US, Southeast Asia, which is Singapore, and Japan. So these are all the regions where you have availability zones. So you can take advantage of it. But once again, keep in mind that there is going to be some bandwidth cost associated with that. Okay. What was the other item? Okay, just I think this is a separate topic. So just in terms of networking, all the regions, if your traffic, and once again, I just want to repeat that point. Any traffic between two Azure provided IP address, public or private, will always stay on Azure, will never leave our network. Okay, unless until you are doing some routing or kind of force tunneling, it will always stay on Azure Fiber. So that's why I take advantage of it, and we'll probably discuss networking in a future session in more depth. So this is, I just want to kind of do a quick recap of all of the Azure kind of, this high availability feature. And with that, just a small demo just to show through the UI, like how you can pick those regions. So let's say if I want to create a virtual machine, hope everybody can see my screen still.
Yes.
And yes, and let's say I'm going to pick a region, and I'm going to call it M. So let's pick East US 2. These are my availability option. Okay. These are availability sets, availability zone, or I can just take this VM and create a scale set. Okay, so multiple instances of this VM. So once again, if let's say I'm gonna pick availability zone, then it will ask me which zone it's gonna go. Normally we have 3 availability zones. So it will ask me what zone I'm gonna go in, which zone I need to deploy this application, and that's where it will deploy this particular VM. To be honest, deploying a single VM in a zone doesn't buy you anything. Either you will have to have multiple VMs, or better off use a scale set to deploy across the VMs. Because if those multiple VMs, I think you get it. I mean, if they belong to the same application, I mean, same tier, that's all good. But if you have different tiers that are deployed in different zones, I mean, one VM in one zone, the second one in the other, um, there are still single VMs that once again will not buy you much, because if that zone goes down, a part of your, I mean, entire part of your application is gone. Okay. So just want to show it to you. And by the way, this is available also from command line, CLI, things like that, so that you can do it. And if I pick, let's say, availability set, it will ask me, okay, you have to create a new availability set. And basically, once again, creating availability set will not create multiple VMs. What you will have to do is you will have to create other VMs and add them to that availability set. Okay, that's what will do it. And once again, common sense that use each tier in a separate availability set, not the entire application in one availability set. So that's kind of some things that the design decision that you have to make when you are building those applications on top of Azure platform. Okay. So with that, I will just open up for any questions, comments, feedback.
I have one question. If a customer has an option of availability set or availability zones, right? And as you said, the AZs have a higher SLA. Why would any customer pick availability set over AZ? If both are available, why not always by default pick AZ?
Excellent question. Cost. Because right now there is no cost of bandwidth between zones. Okay. But that will change. That will change on March 20th, where there will be some cost associated with the zones. Okay. That's one thing. That that cost may be negligible or not meaningful for a customer. Second thing is latency. Just keep in mind, if your application are sensitive to latency, each tier has to be, like I have some customer who have application where they have to be close to each other in a sense that the latency, they were very latency sensitive. Okay. In that case, you may want to have them in the same, data center, or maybe use availability set versus availability zones, or maybe even, and I think we talked about in a previous session about what we call proximity placement group, which allows you to put VMs physically close to each other in a data center, because in the end, no matter how fast is your networking, you cannot beat speed of light.
Got it. So what's the
So that's
proximity placement group? I mean, how does that differ here?
so yeah, quick proximity placement group. But when you put VMs in a proximity placement group, they are physically close to each other. So they may be on the same rack, or in a way, so there is very minimal latency between those VMs. These are once again for latency sensitive application. But once again, it's a double-edged sword. You have that, but then you kind of, your HADR is a bit kind of impacted, because if that rack goes down, then the application goes down. Okay. So that's where you have to kind of do that, what I call like, dance, where find the middle ground. And there is no one solution for every application. Every application is different, so you have to pick what tools you want to use to address that application. Okay.
Got it. Thanks.
Any other questions, folks?
Your VNet, can you briefly, your VNet overlays and can span regions?
No, VNet overlays cannot span regions. VNet, what you can do VNet peering. So I have a VNet 1 in region, let's say East 2, you have one in West US 2. You can connect them through peering, but they cannot span overlays. They cannot span regions.
Okay, so a VNet is in the region.
Yes, it's specific to a region. Absolutely.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions, folks?
Where is that option for the proximity placement group? Is that here in the dropdown, or that's a whole different?
No, it's a totally different resource. I mean, yeah, you have to use a different way. I forgot like how you do it, but that's a different proxy placement group. Is a different way you set up VMs.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah. Probably, if you want, you can reach out to me offline. I can share some resources.
Sure, thanks.
Okay. Anything else? We're right. We are 1 minute above. Okay. Thank you very much. And sorry for the interruption. I will upload the deck as well as the recording in our YouTube channel. So, by the way, our website is Azure Power Lunch. If you wanna kind of download the meeting invite, and there was a snafu on my part in sending the right invite. So just download the invite from there, and you should be good to go. As well as the link to our YouTube channel is there as well if you want to see some videos, download some slide decks. Okay, thank you very much. Happy Friday, everyone. Have a great weekend.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Thanks. Bye.